Hello and welcome to another episode of Household Filmmaking. I am your host, Christopher, and this is the Ray Bradbury Live Forever reunion interview because I was honored last year to be able to do visual effects for Bill Oberst Jr.'s one-man show, Ray Bradbury Live Forever, approved by the Ray Bradbury estate and written using the words of the man himself, Ray Bradbury. I'm very pleased to have Bill as a guest here. Bill, thanks so much for catching up with me. It's really great to talk to you again.
Christopher, it's good to talk with you too, man. You're a friend and a creative comrade, and I love working with you in the show, so this is a delight.
It was a great time, and I'm, to this day, it was a magical experience, honestly. I'm so glad that you asked me to be a part of it. I feel like the spirit of Ray and God and Providence and whatever other forces are out there brought us together because there was, I guess this is a great place to start talking about it. There was just a synergy around this project between you and I over the phone. Let's start with kind of our appreciation of Ray Bradbury and why he's important, and for those who don't know who he is. In your words, and to you, who is Ray?
I think Ray is the most human writer of the 20th century, and he is primarily known for creating fables surrounding technology. For Ray, the humanity behind the technology was always what was most important, not the technology. So when Ray writes a story about a foghorn, the story is not about the device. It's about the feeling that the man had who invented the device, and so forth and so on. He always respected the humanity, and that's what I think makes him a great writer of all genres.
His books, most famous, which is required reading in most high schools, which I think is fantastic, is Fahrenheit 451. As well as the Martian Chronicles, which was created and turned into a television series in the mid-'80s, which wasn't that good of a television series, but it's one of my favorite books, as well as the Halloween Tree, the October Country, From the Dust Returns. He wrote for Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, as well as an inspiration on some of Gene Roddenberry's technology for Star Trek, most notably the holodeck, which was originally the Velt, a short story called The Velt, which was essentially the model for the holodeck in Star Trek. So, but I'm really glad that you brought up the idea of the humanity behind the technology. Is there a favorite story of yours that really kind of stands out with that theme? I mean, you mentioned the foghorn, which is in the play.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of the foghorn in there. Gosh, there's so many of them, Christopher. All of the Martian Chronicles, all of that is not really about rocketry or about the science of settling on Mars, like the movie The Martian was. Ray said, "My Mars is a place for the old gods to go, lest they be forgot." And the Martian Chronicles is a great example of this. It's the technology and the rocketry of getting to Mars, but it's what fallible humans do with the technology. There's a great story in there of a man who is alone. He's been left alone, the only settler on Mars. And so when he's a young man, afraid that he's still going to be alone when he's an old man on this planet, he creates a series of messages for himself. But by the time he becomes old, he forgets, A, that he created the messages, and B, that he was a smartass when he was a young man. So his younger self starts calling him up and reminding him of how old he is now and how young the other one is, and driving the old man crazy. So it's a story about technology, but it's really a story about our use of technology, in this case, to be cruel not only to others, but to ourselves. And he does this over and over and over again. He said that someone at UCLA showed him a very early prototype of the cell phone before there were such things in the 70s, and said, "Isn't this a marvelous, marvelous device?" And Ray said, I said, "No, it is not a marvelous device. You are marvelous because you have helped create this device. He was always insistent that if we focus on the technology, we'll be lost, and I think he was right.
That's a really very poignant aspect of Ray for you to notice and bring to the surface, because most of the time when his works have been adapted, it really does kind of focus on the technology. I mean, I think that was the mistake of, was it A Sound of Thunder, the movie that they made, was really they just focused.
Yeah, it's not about a time machine.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not about a time machine and a butterfly. It's about how these human beings are doing something that anyone would think was a really bad idea, going back on time to shoot dinosaurs. But humans do really stupid things that we know are bad because, well, nothing bad has happened yet. And then Eccles, the protagonist of the story, he steps off the path because he gets scared, and he's completely ruined the timeline. And the response of the people who were responsible for taking him back there is to be mad at him, and he dies at the end. So I got lost in my thought there. But Ray's stories they're very rarely adapted well because Ray's a writer, and as he said, I am not a machine person, I am a language person. And it's really hard for cinema to focus on language.
Well, yeah, definitely. I remember reading a story in the Martian Chronicles, and it was about the first expedition to Mars, because for those who haven't read the Martian Chronicles, it starts off with a series of expeditions, and I won't spoil it, but each expedition to Mars yields a completely different result in what that expedition feels is first contact. So people go, oh, these are these strange first contact stories. But in fact, the first contact is just kind of the incidental detail of what's going on. So the first characters you meet on Mars are a Martian man and wife who are completely unhappy in their Martian marriage. And
oh, God, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful story. Ilya.
Yeah.
Lovely story.
It's one of my favorites, and it's absolutely, you feel every ounce of loneliness and frustration and anger that these two characters have with each other. And not only do you feel it, but you identify with it in a way that, you know, even if you're happy in your life, I think anybody who's experienced love or miscommunication would understand where these characters are coming from and identify with the loneliness that they feel. And yet he does it in a way that is so poetic and beautiful and tragic that by the time the story's done, you've been through this emotional journey in this unique and fantastical environment, and you love the environment and you love the characters, but really you've experienced a very human story. And
you know, it's funny that you say that as a human story. I don't mean to interrupt it, but it just crossed my mind. I have a great clip of Ray with Steve Allen in like 1955, and Ray is talking about humanity and what humanity is. And Ray said humanity is not at all dependent upon physiology. That for Ray, humanity is dependent upon our ability to feel emotion. He wrote some really lovely poems about tears and wondering if tears in strange creatures in strange worlds were the same as they are for us. The ability to emote, the ability to feel pain, the ability to feel fear, the ability to feel love, the ability to empathize. He said that if those are present, then the being is human. And so he thought that, and that's a little bit dangerous for some people because Ray's walking us down the road there, not only of recognizing the humanity of creatures we may find on other planets, but on creatures right here on Earth, like whales and large mammals and dolphins and the higher levels of chimpanzees who have all of these things. And so Ray's leading us right down the path of saying they too are human. It's very subversive.
Yeah, and Ray had a very complex view of humanity because he could write and find the very worst in humanity and bring it out as an absolute horror of what we can be capable of. But at the same time, he was very also optimistic about what we were capable of as creators and explorers. And he very much did want to encourage humanity to reach for the stars and try to go back to the moon and colonize Mars and the planets and beyond, because he was very much about the what did he say? We're impossible beings in an impossible universe.
Yes.
But here we are, and it's miraculous, and we should keep exploring that miracle. So it wasn't a nothing he wrote to me was a condemnation of humanity. It was more of a just be aware in our fallibility that we are a magnificent species capable of both wonderful and terrible things. So just be aware of that as you tenuously step forward and try and make a better person out of yourself and create a better world around yourself. At least that's what I get.
It reminds me of Benjamin Franklin's great quote, "Let us all doubt a moment our own infallibility." And that was what he was all about. He said one day we're murderers, and the next day we're lovers, and the next day we're fiends, and the next day we're angels. And he said it will never change, never change. We're always going to be that way. And so in his books, he sent these characters out into these fantastical environments, and they're every bit as human as Ray thought we would always be. He said there will never be a change in human nature, but that's not a reason for us to sit here and die and not send ourselves out into space to live forever.
Yeah, this is a rabbit hole we could continue to go down for hours, I'm sure. I do want to make a couple of more comments on it that I just can't help myself. But one of the beauties of some of his characters is that they will have good intentions, but still, even with good intentions, do evil things. And so you're
just like us.
Yeah. So you're left wondering, am I supposed to? I identify with this character, but at the same time, I find what they did abhorrent, and then other characters are faced with decisions or the repercussions of that, and they have to do what in their heart they're against, but they still have to do it to stop something worse from happening. So these are some of the beauties of his writing, and I have to wonder, I'm pretty sure of it, although I haven't looked into it, if Ray's philosophies had an impact on Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick when it came to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Because one of the themes that people seem to see in there, and I'm inclined to agree, is that, these characters are kind of trapped in a world of technology, and the journey to the monolith is kind of a reawakening and a breaking away of technology, because they encounter an alien species that seems to be technologically superior, but it's not in a technological way. It's almost like they're a magical evolution and transcendence. So, I do feel Ray's fingerprints on all the other sci-fi that is modern that we see in this day and age. I feel like that touches there, and a lot of people don't know it because they see Star Wars or they see 2001 or Star Trek as the main notes. But even then, there's a starship in Star Trek called the Bradbury. So
As my last note before you get out of this rabbit hole, I agree with you. We could fall down forever. For those of you readers, for those of you viewers who are readers and who really want an introduction to Bradbury, let me suggest a story in the Martian Chronicles, which is called "And the Moon Be Still As Bright." Though the moon be still as bright. That's just Google that. Ray Bradbury, "Though the Moon Be Still As Bright." It's part of a poem. The line is, but it's a story about an expedition who goes to Mars. And, of course, they're there to rape the civilization and destroy what's left of the civilization, but that's what humans do. And one of the men, who's an archaeologist, starts reading the ancient Roman text. And from there, the captain of the expedition has to make a choice of what are we going to do? Are we going to fulfill our mission? Or are we going to do what he begins to feel is right in his soul. And, of course, it ends horribly, as most human dilemmas of that kind do. But it's a great introduction to Bradbury because, just as you said, you have these two characters, the captain and Spender, and you feel for both of them, and you don't know, am I supposed to... They're both... Well, you just have to read the story. But you will wonder, what am I supposed to feel about these people, both of whom I can see struggling, and you'll see yourself and humanity in there too. It's a beautiful story.
Well, this is a great way for us to segue into a little bit more about our work together on the play and what that's about, because I think I mentioned to you in the past that if I ever got to direct the Martian Chronicles movie, I'm casting you as Spender, and I'm actually going to go after you. I'm going to cast myself in the role of the captain. Because I think we both, that story resonates with us both, and it's a complex story that I think two people that are passionate about it could bring a lot to it. Well, I mean, I don't know what your acting method is like, but for me, when I worked with you, a lot of our creation of the play really came about through conversations we were having like this, because when we first started, you had a very different idea of what the play was going to be and how it was going to open, and then suddenly we were talking about a dream you were having, and then I was talking about, I would react to that and back and forth, and then suddenly we had whole other parts of the play that weren't there before. But let's talk a little bit about your gathering together the stuff for this script and then creating a performance of Ray. I mean, how does that start? And I'm not just talking about I have an idea and I contact, the Ray Bradbury estate and can I do this, but, gathering together the bits of Ray that will create this performance.
It started on a red carpet in Hollywood. I did theater for 16 years, made my living at it, and that's all I did, and I was happy. And I fell into doing movies and TV and did them for 10 years. And I was on a red carpet in Hollywood, Mr. Horror, and we were doing one of the nicer red carpets I've been to. It was a really nice affair, like shrimp, and really fancy. And I walked past the velvet rope, and beside me was a homeless man sleeping just outside the velvet rope on the sidewalk on a piece of cardboard. And I stepped right past him, almost stepped over him, and didn't give any thought to him until I was on the red carpet posing for the little pretty pictures. I even have a video of that, and I can see the moment in that video when I realized that I just stepped over a man who was sleeping on cardboard. And something hit me, Christopher, and I thought, I'm going to die inside if I don't do something different with my life. I love to act. I love to create, but I've forgotten something. There's something I've forgotten. And so I continued to do my movies and things laid off the red carpets, but I started digging around on my stuff, and I picked up Bradbury, who I have all his paperback books from when I was a kid. I started rereading Ray, and I thought, my God, I've forgotten me. I've forgotten Billy. And being Bill Oberst Jr., I've forgotten Billy. And that's a very Ray thing to say, because Ray was all about remembering the wonder, remembering the joy and the awe that you had at ideas when you were a kid. And it just called to me, and I thought, I've got to do something. I've got to do something Bradbury to feed my soul. So the first story I ever read of his was called Pillar of Fire, about the last dead man on earth. He's an angry corpse, and that really appealed to me as a teenager. I loved the angst. So I wrote to Ray's representatives in New York, and I licensed that, and I traveled with that and did well, won some awards with it. It's a solo adaptation of that story. And then I was doing a performance of that at the Pasadena Library, Pasadena, California, and we had question and answer afterwards. And someone said, is there something you'd really like to do that you haven't done? And it just popped out of me, and I said, this is crazy, but I'd like to play Ray Bradbury on a stage show. And so we went on, and then afterwards, two people came up to me, and both were friends of the Bradbury family. And one of them said, if you're serious about what you just said, I'll put you in touch with some people. And he did. And over a 2-year period, I talked with his representatives and his family about, could we do this? Could we do a one-man show about Ray? What might that be like? I compared it to the Hal Holbrook, Mark Twain piece to get them sort of thinking about it and interested, and they had thoughts. And we went back and forth the scripts. I got Dr. John Eller, who is the director of the Center for Ray Bradbury Studies at Indiana State University. That's where all of Ray's stuff is. His books, his papers, his correspondence, his Emmys, his ties, everything from his office is there. So John became my script advisor, and he's a Bradbury biographer and expert. So we worked for a total of about 3 years before I contacted you. We got a script we liked. And then I had to think about, okay, how am I going to present this on stage? Because it's Ray Bradbury. It has to be something more than just a guy standing in front of a curtain. And I want to tour with it, so I need something portable. And the idea of graphics on screen came about. And I knew you from Facebook because you had been involved in the Ray Bradbury Odyssey. And we had gone back and forth about that. And I thought, I wonder if Christopher knows anybody. And it turns out not only did you know somebody, but you were that somebody.
Well, that was, I think I was in touch with you back and forth a little bit on and off. I think I had spotted that you were a Ray Bradbury fan, so messaged you every once in a while and mentioned to you that you were the that I had worked on the play. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was fascinating. Like I said, that, you know, for people who have been long time listeners of this channel, to interview you the first time, and I think it even came up in those interviews that we both love Ray, but there's certainly an excitement behind Ray, and I had gotten to see him speak many times, and I had met him and gotten to work. He had seen my work as I was working on it, but it was through another producer. Unfortunately, I didn't get to visit him at his house before he died, like so many other people did. But yeah, that energy that's there, because people go, why are you doing this? You know, what's so important about this? You know, Ray Bradbury isn't as bankable as he used to be, although I hope at some point he becomes bankable like that again, because I think he's very important, and I don't want him to be forgotten. So yeah, the scripts, I'm trying to remember what was the idea for the script originally? The opening was was a montage.
Well, there were 19 drafts before you got involved. And I think when I contacted you, my opening, I was going to get Jamie Lee Curtis to do a screen piece for the beginning, playing the psychiatrist in Ray's short story, and now I'm struggling for the name of the short, The Murderer, about the man who murders his phone. And this was back in the days when phones were just phones.
Well, it was a wrist phone, right? It was a futuristic wrist phone, and the guy gets tired of people calling him and advertisements on it, so he crushes it. But then that was put aside because of the play was getting to be like 2.5 hours, and I just had to decide, okay, what am I going to cut? What am I going to cut? And when I contacted you, we originally had a montage of his books and stuff at the beginning. But for people who are listening, what we're talking about is essentially a 90-minute movie that I performed to, because I'm touring with the thing, right? So I can't trust on individual venues to have people who will hit hundreds of cues. When Bill says this, hit this file. When Bill says this, hit this file. So what I needed was a rear screen projector, a big screen, and I needed something that is going to run continuously for 90 minutes, and I timed my performance to it. So what Christopher and I had to do was to go through each piece of the script, time it out, and think about, A, does this need an image? B, if it does, what kind of image does it need? How does it fit? How does it transfer to the next image? Because Christopher's visuals become another character in the show. That was the part that was the most exciting for me. There was kind of a moment where I realized that you know, what I was doing was kind of a performance in itself. It wasn't,
Yes.
I had the luxury, though, of being able to get everything fine-tuned, whereas you've got to constantly stay on the ball with the timing. I mean, does that get stressful? It seems like it'd get a little stressful.
Well, it's wonderful because it keeps you from being indulgent. Actors are horrible for being indulgent. You find something that you like, and you see the audience is kind of digging it, so of course you want to live in it. But I don't have the luxury of living in it. I got to move on, or your visuals are going to leave me behind.
Well, what was it? You told me you did a performance for somebody to see what they thought, and they asked you, "Are you having a good time?" And what was the response?
Tell me again. I don't remember.
This is a story you told me, so I'll just tell it, so I don't have to.
Oh, I remember. I remember what you're talking about. Yeah. That was actually during the rehearsals to do Ray's Pillar of Fire at the Hollywood Fringe Theater Festival, and a wonderful actor named Ezra Buzzington. He was in The Artist, and he's been in The Hills Have Eyes. Ezra was directing it for me, and so we were rehearsing in Ezra's basement. And, and I was doing the piece, and I was kind of dragging out a sentence, and he said, "Are you enjoying yourself?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Good, because nobody else is not. Nobody else is, and the audience certainly won't be." And it really slammed home to me, because what Ezra's an accomplished stage actor, and what he taught me was, don't be a selfish actor. Think about your audience. And he said, "You want to slow down?" I said, "Yes, I really want to slow down." He said, "Okay, I'll give you one place in the play to slow down. Pick it." And he made me do that, pick the place in that performance. And he said, "You cannot slow down before then. You have to earn the right to get to this spot where you can live in the language." It was great discipline. So I tried to do the same thing with this show, not to luxuriate on these wonderful word meals that Ray puts together.
And I'm glad you said that, because this is something this is advice I'm always giving other I don't give advice to actors for the most part, but other artists and filmmakers and that sort of thing. I'm constantly saying the same thing. If you luxuriate in anything, it's like watching somebody in mid-conversation drift off into a daydream, and you're sitting there waiting for them to talk again. They're not seeing it like you're seeing it, so you have to cut it down. And in a way, I had to try and keep that discipline as well with creating the visuals, because the last thing I wanted to do was create something on the screen behind you that was bombarding the audience with, all this movement and all of these visuals, because then you're competing with it rather than, having it be an aid. So I started to think of it in terms of like scene changes. I was really just creating scenes for you, and the performance was still on you, and the scene changes would aid, your dramatic moments. But, for the most part, for A Sound of Thunder, when the time machine lands, and, for people who don't know that story, that's what we were talking about before, people going back in time to hunt dinosaurs. So I created a prehistoric jungle with giant butterflies flying around in it. And once that jungle appears and you kind of get the sense that you're landing in a spaceship in it, it's 8 minutes of just that jungle while you give your performance. And maybe every once in a while a little insect or butterfly will kind of float by. And I do dim the lights on it in the scene where the T-Rex is starting to make the appearance in your story. But if I were to go in and make the jungle do all these different things and, create a T-Rex trying to stomp in and that sort of thing, then it would just become a really boring movie, but it would also distract the audience.
And then it would become another bad adaptation of Ray Bradbury works, of which there's so many, because what you would be doing and what I would be doing is concentrating on the plot instead of the words. So that's been the trick in the performance, is to hypnotize the audience. Even if you read a lot, if you are alive in today's culture, your attention span has suffered. And we're not used to hearing lots of words, particularly not lots of well-crafted words. and hypnotize the audience into being language people. So yeah, your visuals are helping with that too, as I'm trying to with Ray's words.
Well, I really wanted to, like I said, I said there's a little mini documentary I put together on the my YouTube channel about this. I really did want to make visuals that were kind of like Ray's words come to life. So that was the big challenge there, was creating something that was very much reminiscent of what I imagined in my head when I read Ray's works, but I also wanted to create something that was texturally
Yes.
Ray Bradbury. You know, like when you look at these days, the inclination of a filmmaker is they read it and they go, oh, Mars, and then they, you know, go into computer and they render out this really well, like realistic looking Mars, and they've got these, you know, Avatar-esque aliens and Martians or whatever, which, you know, looks great, but there's a bit of that texture missing, that kind of old school effects, like Ray Harryhausen, who Ray Bradbury was friends with. You know, it lends itself to that language in a way. So you don't feel like you're literally looking at another world. You feel like you're looking into an imagination.
Yes, and you know what Ray said about realism? He said, to hell with realism. He said, we know far too much of the real world. We knew far too much of what is real. He said, I'm not here to reflect reality. I'm here to escape it, expand upon it, and make myths about it. So yeah, I think you were right on with that approach.
Well, it was a lot of fun, and it was fun to be able to work with other people that were enthusiastic about Ray as well. You had, the big honor for me personally was to be able to bring in Val Merrick, who is the co-creator of Howard the Duck for Marvel Comics, and also the illustrator of a lot of old school Conan comic books. But when he heard about the project, he's like, Christopher, I want in. What can I do? And he created Martian cave paintings, which is not something that I believe Ray came up with on his own. It was an idea you had from a dream, because I think one day
he'd love it. He would absolutely love it. Yeah, I dreamed about a cave, and in the cave were paintings, crude cave paintings, and the cave paintings were depicting Ray Bradbury stories. And I probably got this idea because I love Disney World, and Epcot Spaceship Earth ride is my very favorite, and Ray helped design it. In fact, I have the original script that he wrote for the original concept ride for that. And as you begin that ride, you see, you know, where do we come from? Where do we go? And up on the big screen, there's a caveman fading into a rocket ship and other things. And I think that's probably where that idea came from. But yeah, I dreamed it. And so I asked you, would it be crazy to have cave paintings that sort of suggested some Ray Bradbury stories?
Yeah.
And you said.
I said I love the idea. And I think originally we were just going to do, you know, like some photographs of rocks and then slap some illustrations on them. And I was glad Val wanted in, because I started to try and do cave paintings thinking very naively, oh, they're very rudimentary. It should be easy. I'm an artist. I can do it. And quickly realized that there is a very skilled hand behind some of the original cave paintings that we've discovered. They are crude and rudimentary, but there's a elegance to them and an intelligence to them that I could not nail. Mine looked like kids' drawings when I tried to do cave drawings. So I said to Val, hey, you know, what do you think of doing this? And he had already volunteered to do a marquee poster for the play, which he was oil painting. But then he went and did these cave illustrations that were, I mean, they looked like they had been done by a caveman, but they were Ray's stories. There were rockets, and there were, sea monsters attacking lighthouses and Ferris wheels, and just all this amazing stuff. And at that point, I had been on a trip. I was living in Arizona at the time, so I went to Sedona, and Sedona has very red Martian-like rocks everywhere. Although they have been carved out by water, they're sedimentary. And I took a whole bunch of photos of these rocks and then put them into Photoshop and created a cave. And then I found that in After Effects, I could do what was called a displacement map, where you essentially tell the computer, hey, can we fake this part of the rocks being further back and these being closer, and then do a camera move. And then I put in footage of fire, and then suddenly we had this fire burning in a cave with all these cave paintings, and Timey the butterfly flying through it. And it's probably a good segue to also bring up Timey, because Timey was your idea too, I believe, wasn't it?
Yes, and for your listeners, he's talking about an animated butterfly that Christopher created, and I suggested, because I'm really creative, I said, well, since he's a time-traveling butterfly, why don't we call him Timey?
Well, I think he came out of our discussions of A Sound of Thunder, and that's a time travel.
Butterfly, and then Christopher said, well, a butterfly is a great, it's a great metaphor for Ray, and it will get us from one scene to another, and it can recur. And sure enough, it does. It's a through line right through to the end.
Yeah, sometimes he's a literal butterfly, like he flies through the cave, and there's a hole in the top of the cave, and he flies out it, and then when the camera kind of pans back around to find the butterfly, you're in space, and the butterfly is flying through space away from Mars towards Earth. And then from there, he didn't always appear as a literal butterfly, though. There's when we come to Cougar and Dark's Carnival, he's some graffiti on the side of a tent, and when you go to Greentown at night, the camera kind of pans up, and he's a constellation in the stars. So I always tried to find ways of hiding him in there. Sometimes there would be like a butterfly flying through the veldt, the African veldt, if we were doing that story. Mm-hmm. So, and
your listeners who are filmmakers will appreciate that all that Christopher is saying, you probably wouldn't consciously get half of it as you watch it, but hopefully subconsciously you will pick up on these. But we don't linger on any of it. It's just there.
Yeah, and I again, going back to being overindulgent, I think that if you linger on things, you're drawing people's attention away from the reason they showed up. You're going, oh, look over here, isn't this neat what we did? And then it's not about Ray's words anymore. It becomes about us, and that's not why we did this.
And that's why I think he was so frustrated with adaptations of his work. They never worked, because I think personally that the medium is wrong. Ray was a writer. And actually, I've spoken to people who were with him at the time when he was really getting into Hollywood and wanting to do scripts so badly. And he badly wanted to be a Hollywood scriptwriter. He wanted that, and he wanted to be in that world because he loved movies so much growing up. But his editors were saying to him over and over again, Ray, you're losing years' worth of great stories that you could be writing. Stop chasing this. But of course, we all have to live the way that we live, and he wanted to do it, but it was always frustrating to him.
It's difficult to understand different mediums. I mean, novels and short stories. I mean, he just thrived in that environment, and when it came to Hollywood, and I've heard this so many times. I mean, even the legendary special effects artist Rick Baker was just on the Joe Rogan show, and later in life he would be doing, say, The Wolfman, and he would be getting these people coming at him going like, "Why does it have so much hair?" It's a werewolf, and then finally he would say to them like, "Why did you hire me? Well, you're the best. Like, then let me be the best." And I think that for someone like Ray, who he knew how to make his stories great, to suddenly be in an environment where everybody's got their thing to add or take away or change 1,000 times. You've got to be a very specific kind of person to thrive in an environment like that.
And Ray was not. He wasn't.
Yeah.
Because they were his stories, damn it, and he wrote the stories. And Ray's ego. You have to have an ego to be as big and as omnipresent in culture as Ray Bradbury was. So he did not deal well with people saying, we'll just take a little of your idea and we're going to mix it in with some other things.
Well, Ray was someone as well who, I think, like the great directors as well, they know exactly what they want. They know exactly what it needs to be and why. A lot of producers coming in, they want to change things here and there because they want their fingerprints on it, but they're not thinking about theme or, emotional resonance. It's like I have trouble with, changing my stories. I'll do different drafts, but once I kind of have the general story kind of put down and I know why everything is there, it's very hard to change it. Not because I don't want to, but if someone comes in with a change suggestion, I need to know exactly what that change is going to do in service of the story, and what characters exist in the story to serve in terms of that theme. If there's a character there that I can't justify in terms of the theme, then that character's out. And it's a hard thing to do in Hollywood writing because, say you're doing something like a slasher film, those characters just exist to be killed in different ways. They're not there to present a theme to the movie. There is no theme to the movie. It's just, you're at the camp and there's a, dude with a machete hacking people up and one person's going to survive and maybe stop them. And there's nothing wrong with those types of movies, but they're certainly not the kind of movie that Ray wants to tell. Ray wants to give you something that you take with you for hopefully the rest of your life.
If anyone had ever taken his 1962 novel, Something Wicked Dwells, and done what Sam Peckinpah, the director, told Ray he was going to do, Sam Peckinpah optioned the story for a while, and Ray said, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to rip the pages out of the book and stuff them in the camera. Because it's already written cinematically.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody ever did that, it would be the perfect Ray Bradbury adaptation. But no one ever will do it because they'll think, well, people won't understand. It's too complex. It's too nuanced. And so what we're doing with the Ray Bradbury Live Forever stage presentation is yet another adaptation of Ray's works. And it's also fraught with all of these similar questions of, I can't do the entire Sound of Thunder story and I've got to edit it down. And can I edit it down and still retain its core and what is important and what is not? And those are really hard decisions to make. I feel a big responsibility in making. When I did in Los Angeles, many of Ray's family and friends were there, and they were kind afterwards. But, I got some emails from some of them afterwards who said, upon reflection, I think you should change this and change this and change this. And I take all of that to heart. So, yeah, it's a difficult thing to adapt someone's work who was so personal and particular about their work, especially when you're playing them.
And what about the challenges of presenting this play to people who have not read Ray's work before? Because you toured this around a bit, and you got some comments about that. I'm sure you want to make a play that inspires people to want to learn more about Ray, rather than just catering to the people who have read the stories and know about Ray already.
Yeah, I've done a couple dozen performances. We did an off-Broadway stage reading, which was really, really well received. And that gave me I thought, okay, if New York audiences like it, then it's going to work. We did it in L.A. for Ray's friends. And then I started touring around a couple dozen times, and I got the reactions were split into two camps. My God, I love this. Ray would have loved it. And that's A. And B, I don't understand. So it's the I don't understand people who are not voracious readers, A, or B, voracious readers of Bradbury. So that's what I'm doing now, is retooling it, hopefully to get it to a point where people who are vaguely interested but may not have a detailed interest in Ray Bradbury would be able to enjoy it and take away a love of language and want to know more. And yeah, that's a delicate balance, because I refuse to do a Wikipedia show in which a dead celebrity, in this case Ray Bradbury, comes on stage and says, "I was born in Waukegan, Illinois in 19..." I'm not doing that.
Right.
Especially not today, when everything you need to know about a celebrity is in your pocket. Pull out your phone and you're done. You don't need me. So what I'm trying to find is the universal aspects of Ray's work that will appeal to anyone, any human being, in any culture, whether or not they've read Ray Bradbury, which is a different thing than I was trying to do when I initially started. I thought, well, I'll just do what Cal Hobart did for Mark Twain. But when Hobart did Twain, we didn't have this thing in our pocket. So we were curious about Twain and his life and the anecdotes and the stories he would tell. But now we can see Ray himself on YouTube telling these same anecdotes. So all of that material is, I consider, not available to me, and I don't want to do it because I don't want to replicate that. So I'm trying to go through his work and find the universal. Yeah, and it's tough, and that's what I'm doing now, is retooling the show to reflect that, just for performances next year, and Ray would have been 100 next year.
Yeah, we're coming up on Ray's centennial, and I'm really glad to hear you say that, because it's one of the things that, for me, knowing Ray's work so well and getting to see the first performance, was you were giving the experience of what it is like to read Ray Bradbury and have that very intimate experience between author and reader, which is, for me with Ray, it's what art is all about. It's an experience. It moves you in a way that when done successfully, it's transcendent of anything that you can put into just words, or, like you said, definitely not a Wikipedia article. But, when I see a great piece of art, whether it be hanging on a wall or a movie or a play or a concert or something, there's always kind of that moment where you feel that raw emotion kind of welling up in your chest and kind of, pulsing in your head. So it's one of those things where, to accomplish that, it's a huge undertaking, but I wouldn't have been nearly as interested in doing this project. It would have just been like, well, I'll do it and I'll take the money and I'll get paid and here's your stuff. But, to involve myself in it the way that I did was because you really did feel that same raw emotion in response to his work and wanted to give that experience to the audience of your play. I'm very excited that you're, continuing to refine it. And I'm also very excited about the centennial, because there are people that you're talking with right now about, being involved with the centennial. Am I right?
Yes, the Bradbury estate actually has a well-known producer who is producing the centennial for them. And there are various displays at a national level and celebrations of Bradbury's life that are planned for next year when he would have been 100. He really wanted to live to be 100. Heck, he wanted to live to be forever, didn't he?
Yeah, well, I can't blame him. Somebody told me recently that, the medical technology to extend life is getting there, and it's possible the first 200-year-old person has already been born. And even I was like, well, yeah, he's me. But I at least want to see Halley's Comet, and I understand Ray's wanting to continue on, because I think Ray was a person who did love seeing human progress and seeing what we were capable of, and it is exciting to look towards the future and wonder how our world will change. I do like to think that Ray is in some way transcended and evolved into some form of afterlife where he is smiling down on us. There was certainly experiences that I had during our production where, and I think you and I noted a few of them, when we went, it's like Ray gave us a nudge, or like he gave us some help where we were asking for it. It just always seemed like the in our excitement for him, it was like almost summoning him to us in a way that we could feel.
I agree.
Well, I think I'm excited, like I said, about the centennial, and I hope that as you kind of tweak the play, don't forget about me. I still want to help out where I can, if it means helping to modify something visually. But I am very excited about this. Now, you're currently in Chicago. You're doing a movie tomorrow. You're constantly working, aren't you?
Well, I like to work. It's the German in me. I have a need to keep working so that people won't think that I'm shiftless and lazy. It's really something that's drilled into you as a child, as a work ethic. And Ray had that very strongly. You know, he would always say, "Do your work, do your work." In his case, it was Midwestern. In my case, it was a Southern lower middle class poor raising. Yeah, I like to work.
I like to work too, and I know Ray did as well. He had a real passion for it. Well, I'm looking forward to everything you've got coming up, and to my listeners, I would say, please go and check out Bill on his social media. There's was it actor Bill Oberst Jr. on Facebook, or Bill Oberst Jr.
Yeah.
actor? One of those.
Yeah, there's an actor, Bill Oberst Jr., Bill Oberst Jr., 2 pages. And I'm not very good on Facebook because I write incomplete sentences, and I don't like using emojis. So my Facebook posts read like a little, like, what is this guy from the 19th century? But I just can't bring myself to use, all of the shorthand and put a bunch of like devil and smiley and fire emojis. I don't understand all of that. So if my posts are rather staid, then that's why. Even on Twitter, I try to write in complete sentences. I'm Bill Oberst Jr. there, but I would welcome you following and interacting.
Well, yes, I write in complete sentences too, for the most part. Again, you know what? With Twitter, I have to say it's a double-edged sword because, like you said, is like it forces you to not be overindulgent. So there is that. But anyway, Bill, thank you for being on. I'm going to have you stick around for our post show for our Patreon supporters. But thanks again for being on. I'll leave all your social media in the links in the description below. So thanks for being on.
Thank you. It's an honor to know you and work with you, Christopher.
Oh, likewise. It is an honor. Thank you.